All right, everyone, we can get you to take a seat. We're ready to kick off. Welcome, everyone, to Triumph Waukesha. I'm Bill Brooks, the owner here. I have with me Don Gassonet from Moto Venue, which is a adventure training. We'll let Dan speak to it, but I just want to introduce my team to you. And you need anything today, let us know. We got soda and water here at by the table. Restrooms are at the far end if you need to use those. So, but again, my name is Bill. I have Paul, Marketing Director. We have Joe, our Controller. Brian, who's working electronics. And that Rhett I see over in the corner down there. Jesse, Technician, he's back of the room. Victor, and I don't see Marissa, but I'm sure she's at the counter. So, but welcome all. So with that, thanks for coming. We're excited about this event. And we hope to see you again in the future for other events we may have. And with that, I'll let Don tell the story.
How's everyone going today? Good. My name is Don Gassonet. You can just call me Don, because most people can't pronounce my last name. You saw it spelled out phonetically. I am the founder of Moto Venue. We are an adventure motorcycle training company, but we're more than that. We're actually a new training group of family of adventure riders. Our mission here is to bring national level motorcycle training for adventure bikes off-road to the Midwest. Think BMW, think Rawhide, think Austin. That now is changed, and we are now in the Midwest offering that level of training for you. But we didn't want to just do that. I didn't want to come up here and just talk to everyone and say, oh, I'm going to sell you on coming and training. We've created this course. It's an off-road course that has a water feature, sand traps, oasis, rock gardens, up and overbounds, trees, grassy areas, skills course areas, anything that you're going to find out in the backcountry. Anything you're going to find in the backcountry, we have that in our training area. And we're opening that up to the public for $99 to come and train for a half a day. So that hasn't been available. I don't know, show of hands, who has a nice place to ride where you can practice off-road stuff here in the Midwest? Anyone? Anyone? Oh, we got one, probably your backyard. Okay. So other than doing a motocross track, that hasn't been available until now. Starting in April, you can come out and train with us for a half day for $99, and you can come out and ride your adventure bike, or you can rent one from us. We have a synergy here with TriumphEvent Waukesha. They also take care of all of our bikes' maintenance, and we highly recommend them for any of our service. Anybody have any questions about having a new training practice area to ride off-road here in the Midwest? Where? That's a good question. Thought I would just check. So we're actually in Blackhawk Farms Raceway in South Beloit, Illinois. Very close to everyone that's here for Chicago, Milwaukee, and Madison. So it's about a 2-hour ride from here, 2 hours from downtown Chicago. The suburbs, it's about an hour and 30 minutes. So I invite all of you to come out, check us out, take a look at our website, grab some of our information back there. You'll be very happy you did, and we look forward to having you part of our community. If you need training and would like to advance your skills, we can provide that also. But we're more happy just to actually promote you and have you guys here and have you guys come and check out what we have available. So thank you very much for that. And with that, bring it back to Bill.
All right, everyone. Well, the feature presentation, we have Kiva and Bridget. So come on out, ladies.
Hi everybody, my name is Kiva Carmen Frank. I'm a Milwaukee native, so I'm very excited to be here today. I had the privilege of traveling with Bridget for about 8 months on my own motorcycle. We went from Wisconsin to Ushuaia, the tip of South America. And then I also had a chance to ride with her briefly in Europe, from Germany to Bulgaria on a press bike from Kawasaki, Germany. Today I get to sit down with Bridget and ask her some questions about her recent attempt to set a Guinness World Record. And I'd ask you to please save your questions for the end, because Bridget will be taking questions after our conversation. Now I'm very proud to introduce my best friend and my riding partner, Bridget McCutcheon.
Hello there.
Bridget's wearing her Argentinian beret today. That's for the beret haters in the crowd. You know who you are. You can't stop us.
Correct.
Bridget, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I'm excited. There's a lot of people here. Hi, guys. Hi. How are you guys doing today? The weather's nice. It's April, just in case you didn't know.
So Bridget, I don't know if I'm myself. Can people hear me? Okay, cool.
Yes.
So Bridget, you are from Wisconsin. Could you give us a window into your childhood growing up in Wisconsin?
Yeah, sure. So I grew up in northern Wisconsin, if you guys know where Ashland is. Hey. I grew up in northern Wisconsin, Ashland. I grew up on a farm. I was homeschooled. It was a fully functioning farm. To give you sort of an overview of what would happen. When I was growing up, we had pigs, and we would have to give the pigs like vaccinations. And as little children, the only defense we had was our life jackets. And we would put life jackets on, and we would chase the pigs around and wrestle them until they gave up and we could give them their medicine. But that was pretty much my childhood, was running around after various animals that either didn't want to be caught or didn't want to be penned. But it was great. You know, the lakes up there is really beautiful. I got to grow up in nature, can't complain.
So could you tell us why you started riding a motorcycle? What were some of your first motorcycle trips like? Tell us about your first bike.
Okay, so my family growing up, a lot of my family members had motorcycles. So my oldest brother, Michael, he was the first one to have a motorcycle. He didn't have a car. He drove his motorcycle in Wisconsin winters with his little sidecar on it. He would bundle up, and he had this one-piece Aerostitch chute that he would bundle up in, and he basically just looked like a big gray snowman. But he started riding, and then, like other brothers, I have 5 siblings, by the way, and all but one of them have motorcycles. Some of them have multiple motorcycles. So it sort of, you know, became a thing with my family, not for like adventure riding, but more for just commuting and, you know, general having fun. And then I was sort of decided, well, they're all doing it, might as well. And it started as just a commuter thing. It started as, you know, it's cheap, I can go where I want, that sort of thing. I started on a Kawasaki Ninja 250, 2004, you know, with the square headlight. And my first motorcycle trip, I had gotten it, I work on boats, my real job is working on boats. And I had gotten home from my first contract and got a motorcycle late in the year, which was that motorcycle, and didn't really do anything on it. I was kind of scared of it. I was like, oh, this is like no seatbelt. And then that next spring, I went back to visit my friends on the West Coast, and I went from Wisconsin to Washington, which is about 1,800 miles, that I did between 600 to 700 miles a day on a Ninja 250, which at the time was miserable, but I didn't know any better, so it was fine. And so that was where it started, that first motorcycle trip, going cross country. There was just something about it. I was, you know, a lot of it was very cold, but it was in May, I think. But it was great. It was fantastic. I felt really engaged in a way that I never had in a car. You know, you're in a car, you're in a bubble. You're going through the world is just sliding off you. With a motorcycle, on a motorcycle, you are subject to everything that's going on. And that was so amazing for me, because it was like my brain was finally doing something. I wasn't going to fall asleep, I wasn't bored, if I wanted to I could stand up, like all of this, and it really made it for me.
Yeah. So where did you get the idea to try to set the Guinness World Record for youngest person to circumnavigate the globe by motorcycle, and how did your family react when you told them what you were going to do?
So I got the idea from my older brother, Thomas, and like most of my family members, he was involved in motorcycling. And he had taken a first generation KLR to South America, and he got about as far as northern Argentina before COVID happened. And he ended up having to leave his bike behind in Argentina, which was tragic. But I was talking to him one day, and he was like, you know, youngest person to go around the world on a motorcycle is 23. And at the time I was 20. He said, I'm too old to do this, but you can do it. You know, classic siblings passing the buck over. And I sort of him-hawed around about it for a while, and I was like, I'd never been outside the US before this trip, and certainly not then. And so I was, you know, understandably trepidatious about going around the world. But I was speaking to one of my Sea Scout instructors, which is, it's like Boy Scouts, but on boats. And she said, don't tell yourself no just because, basically. It's just don't tell yourself no because you haven't done it before or you don't have a good reason. Because I feel like we do that a lot is, you know, we have something big and we're like, I can't do that. And me and Kiva, we've come up with a term for this, which is crab claw brain. And this is
Describe the crab claw brain. What happens?
So it's when a new idea is given to you, and your brain has this other idea in its little crab claw in its little hand, and it doesn't want to let go. It doesn't understand the new idea, so it's scared of it, and it's like, I don't want to do that. And this happened a lot with me and Kiva, and it's one of the ways we use to communicate with each other, because I do it very frequently. And so I'll be like, all right, crab claw brain, just give me some time for my brain to move on or to stay where it is instead of immediately rejecting the idea. And that was, don't tell yourself no, was another way of doing that. Now, how did my family react? We had sort of a family get together for a different reason, and we were all sitting around a campfire, and I was like, all right guys, I'm gonna go around the world on a motorcycle. And my dad's immediate reaction was, he was super excited. He's like, that's really cool. And my mother just put her face, no more. I need another one of my children is doing something dangerous.
And started praying.
Yes, and started praying. Literally immediately started praying. The rest of my siblings, you know, if anyone here has siblings, they know it doesn't matter what you do. They will never be impressed. Yeah. Which is good, you know, it keeps you very modest. And they thought it was cool, and especially now that I've done it, they think it's really cool, but they're not too impressed. Yeah.
Yeah. So you set out to set this Guinness World Record, and the Guinness organization has some requirements. So it took me a while to learn this, but setting a Guinness World Record is actually harder than riding your motorcycle around the world. Because you have to ride your motorcycle around the world, but then you also have to follow a bunch of very specific rules and guidelines and document it all. So can you describe some of these guidelines that were provided to you by the Guinness organization?
So these are the primary ones. So the primary ones are, you have to go a minimum of 24,900 miles, which is the circumference of the equator. You have to cross the equator at least once. You have to go over 2 antipodal points, which are 2 points that directly oppose each other on the globe. And for me, that was Lima, Peru, and this little corner of Thailand. You have to go in one continuous direction, so, you know, east to west, west to east. North to south is a little difficult, but go ahead. And then you can't stay in one place for more than 2 weeks, which is hard. Unless for medical reasons, and you have to have the same motorcycle the whole time. So I had the same bike the whole time. You have to ship it everywhere you go. It's a thing. But those are the things that make it different from just going around the world. Is doing the Guinness version is much harder.
Yeah, definitely. Could you give the audience an overview of the route that you ended up taking? And we have a visual aid.
Yes. So I started, and you can see like the sort of North America angle is very green because North America is big states. So I started, you can see up by the lakes here, and then I went down sort of into Texas. And then I went up to Washington, and the rest of that is from me coming home. So then I went down the West Coast, which is beautiful, by the way. I love the West Coast, especially Washington. There's a rainforest up there. I've been there on my previous adventures in Washington, and it's just gorgeous. Great riding too. Come down, and then in San Diego, I met up with Kiva, and then we went down into Baja, Mexico. From Baja, we took a ferry over to mainland Mexico, and then you can sort of see the route that goes down to Central America. We spent a lot of time in Mexico, which we accidentally spent too much time in Mexico.
Mexico was like ground zero. We spent 2 months in Mexico, and it was like learning how to do everything that we needed to know how to do to continue traveling.
Yes, and also learning how to interact with each other.
Right.
And then we skip over from Panama to Bogota, Colombia, is typically where they fly over. You used to be able to put your motorcycle in a boat and just, like a sailboat, and you and your motorcycle could go over and sail, and that's really cool. You can't do that anymore.
And you're talking about the Darien Gap, right?
Yes, the Darien Gap, which there are no roads from Central to South America. So Bogota, Colombia, and then we went down the west side of South America, and you see we came up a little bit into Bolivia, and then continued going down all the way to Ushuaia, Argentina, and then came back up to Buenos Aires, Argentina, and at this point me and Kiva parted ways, and then I went over to Madrid, Spain, which I was there for Easter, and the Spanish know how to party. It was great. Most of them we just ate a lot of food and slept a lot, so it's great. And then I went up through France, and immediately I sped across the UK to Ireland, and then it's called the Wild Atlantic Way, and if you ever get the chance, it's amazing. So it's literally just the western coast of Ireland, and it goes like, but it's amazing. All the people, there's like tons of little towns that you go through, and it's really awesome. The people are really amazing. Yes, it is very wet. It's Ireland, but amazing. And then I went to Scotland for a day, decided I need to fix my crash bars and that it was too cold, and then I went down sort of, if anyone knows where Birmingham is, it's sort of in the middle, and then I stayed with a friend, fixed my crash bars, and continued on. And then back to Germany, up into Norway, Sweden, back down to Italy. What is the name of the mountain pass that we did?
Colli Somalia. It's the Colli del Somalia. It's the highest off-road pass in the Alps, and it's right on the border between northern Italy and France.
Yeah.
Also very good, very hard riding.
Yes. It is also, if you're ever on a motorcycle trip in Europe or a bicycle or whatever, Colli del Somalia is really awesome. 10 out of 10 would recommend. Then you can see there's this very narrow line, and I go over to Turkey and then into Iraq, and I go down Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, Oman, and then UAE, and then I skip over, I take a ferry to Iran, and then I sort of go through, I was only in Iran for 5 days, by the way. And then I go into Pakistan, and you can see I sort of go up to very northern Pakistan, just a little bit before the Chinese border. And that area is really awesome. Southern Pakistan isn't very developed, and it's either desert or one continuous town, pretty much. And it's very, I would say, difficult to be a foreigner there, because you have to be escorted the whole time, and everybody's staring at you. And they don't blink. Like, they just stare at you and they don't blink. And it's, anyway, it can be disconcerting. But after that, I went into India for about a day and a half, and then to Nepal, and I spent about a week and a half in Nepal. Now, Myanmar's land border is closing. Myanmar is about right there, so I couldn't drive there, so that's why there was this gap. And then I went to Thailand, went to my antipodal point, which is right there, and then went down to Malaysia and came back to Vancouver, and then rode from Vancouver to home. Done November 1st, November 4th.
November 4th, yeah. 14 months was your trip. And I want to clarify for the audience, these gaps across oceans, this is where Bridget shipped her motorcycle on an airplane. You can ship it by boat. It's much less expensive. it's much slower, or you can ship it by cargo airplane. So she shipped from Buenos Aires to Madrid. She shipped from Kathmandu, Nepal to Bangkok, Thailand, which is a common shipping route these days because those land borders with Myanmar are closed, and then also because it's very difficult to go into China with a personal vehicle, and then obviously Russia is not technically out of bounds to motorcyclists, but very difficult to get into and out of bounds per the Guinness organization, which we'll get into later. And then she shipped from Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia to Vancouver, Canada. It's, as some motorcyclists may know, very difficult to ship a motorcycle into and out of the US because of the dangerous goods certification, so most people ship from Canada. And then you run back to the US. Okay. Context. Okay, so that was your route. Yeah, could you tell the audience a bit about the motorcycle that you chose for this trip? I guess any modifications you made, and why you chose that motorcycle.
So I had a Kawasaki Versys X300, which is sort of like the little sister to the KLR, which I think is very appropriate because my brother had the KLR.
And you're the little sister.
And I'm the little sister. So it's sort of like a street bike that happens to be capable of doing off-road. So it has like the spoke tires, and it has a little more of an off-roady suspension. The particular model that I got, it's a 2020, and I think it was the last year that they made ABS optional. So I actually rode, me and my sister got in a van, drove 600 miles to St. Louis, Missouri to pick up this bike in March of 22? Yeah. And then I rode it back, and we didn't get home till midnight. And it was, I think, -20. And it was -20 for like the last 4 hours I was doing it. We stopped at a Walmart, and we got a bunch of hot hands. And there was like the square hot hands, and I had like 2 here, 2 here. I had one in all of my pockets. I had some in my boots. When I got home, I was wearing this mask, and it had these 2 little breathing tubes in it. And the breathing tubes were almost frosted closed. And my visor, I couldn't see out of my visor, so I had to crack a little bit, and I had to go like this to see where I was going home. Luckily, there was no ice, and I didn't die terribly. But the bike did great. The bike didn't care. I got cold. But the mods that I made to the bike, I didn't do much to her, honestly. I made a custom skid plate because there's not many adventure skid plates for that bike. So I made a skid plate with some help from friends. I did get crash bars for it. They were Giwi crash bars. They fell apart about halfway through South America. I ended up in Britain refitting them with a friend. Now they're great. They have 2 supports that go like around the front of the bike, and then there's 2 supports that go to the skid plate, which I think was really great. I would recommend, if you make your own crash bars, having them go to the skid plate is a great place for them to mount, because you don't want to put all the pressure, you want to distribute the pressure. Anyway, I had handlebar protectors. There's the Austria. Yeah, arc busters. I had some double take mirrors, which were really nice. They did a lot for me, just being able to move them around. My mirrors never break, but yours did. And she had the same bike as I did.
Yeah.
And I don't think there was much else that I did. I mean, I really just it's sort of a plug and play. Like, I just got it and I just went.
And then why did you end up choosing the Versys 300? A lot of people kind of scoff at a 300 motorcycle, take it around the world. So defend our motorcycles, please.
Defend. So initially it was from Thomas, which was the brother that went to South America. He was like, if I did it again, I might do it on this bike. He really liked the Versys. The Versys is very reliable. More people are familiar with the 650. Which is, it's a nice street bike. And the 300 it's also very nice. I never had any problems with her engine, nothing. The only problem I had on pretty much the whole trip, other than, you know, like chains and sprockets and whatnot, was one leaky fork seal. It wasn't even both of them, it was one. But I really chose it and I recommended it to Kiva because it's a smaller bike, it's very affordable. I got it with, it was slightly used, I think it had 300 miles on it, for $5,000. And when you're on a budget, you're young, that's what you got. I couldn't afford to get, you know, an Africa Twin. I couldn't afford to pick up an Africa Twin.
In case you dropped it.
Yeah, in case I dropped it. And I knew I would be dropping it. That's part of, you know, I'm sure. How many people have dropped their bike? Yeah, good. You get the forest out of the hands.
That's what we like to see.
Yeah, that's what happens, is you drop your motorcycle. If you're using it enough, at one point, you're going to drop it, and you have to be able to pick it up. And so I knew I could pick it up. It was low enough to the ground that I could handle it well. I knew it was going to be reliable, so that's what it was. And I knew that most of what I was doing would probably be on road. I certainly did take it off road. I certainly did get it muddy, but yeah.
Yeah. Could you give an overview of the gear that you took for this trip? What's your packing list?
So my packing list, I really like minimalistic packing. If I don't need it, I don't want to have it. You know, that's just more weight that you have to carry around. That's more weight that you have to pick up. It's just, you know, it's not, you don't need it. So I had, you know, I had a 2-man tent, which was sort of a luxury because you have all your gear, you put all your gear in the 2-man tent. What was the name of the tent again?
Ozark Adventure.
Yeah, Ozark Adventure 2-man tent. I really recommend it. I have this tent, my brother had this tent, she has this tent, her dad has this tent, and he's a big motorcycle guy. I think it's like $140 on Amazon. It's a great tent, it's very durable. It's not a super ultra light adventure tent. You don't need that. You can throw rocks to it. Let's sidebar for a minute.
Okay.
We were still in Mexico, I think. And we made a fire, a cooking fire, and I was like, oh, there's all these rocks around, I'll pile them around the fire.
Imagine a beautiful wood-burning pizza oven made out of stones that Bridget found on the ground and carefully constructed. And it was all going well until
the stones started exploding.
Until they heated up enough that they started exploding.
and then we were in a battle.
And then Bridget quick took go ahead.
Yeah, so then the stones were exploding and I was like, oh damn. So I started like shuffling the stones away. There's one stone and it wasn't quite in the fire, but it was closer, and I picked it up and I threw it behind me.
Through my tent.
It went straight through the side of her tent. And she had this, was it Big Agnes?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was like an ultra light Big Agnes tent. It had like these little fairy lights on the ceiling. It was very posh. And then there was another time that some feral dogs came by.
Yeah, we were camped in Mexico, and it was just on the edge of like a pond in like a municipal park, and no one was bothering us, but there was every type of animal you could ever imagine. There were donkeys and cows and chickens and dogs and cats and ducks, and like the entire night it was every animal you could ever think of making noise. And at one point these dogs got into a fight and like busted through the side of the tent and tore a hole in it. So by the time we hit Panama, my tent had 3 holes in it, and 2 of them we had made, and then the third was from a dog fight.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, back to your
gear. Okay.
Yeah, so
we hit tent.
Yeah, we hit the hell out of tent. So tent, sleeping mat, sleeping bag. Now, the sleeping mat and the sleeping bag, I think, are one of the most 2 important things. Like, you getting a good night of sleep on your adventures is really important, because that will set the mood for the rest of your adventures. If you're tired, sleep is really important, people. I don't care what the superheroes say. You need to sleep. And I had an inflatable mattress, I think, what is it? It was this weird name. And having an inflatable mattress, I think, is really nice. It doesn't take up much space. You can find some good, cheaper ones. Having an inflatable pillow. I started the trip, and I was like, I've gone camping in the past. I just roll up my hoodie and I sleep on that. It's fine for a weekend or maybe a week, but if you're doing it long term, just get a pillow. Your neck will thank you. Your brain will thank you, because being held up by something other than your aspirations. It's just, yeah. And then the sleeping bag, being able to be warm when it's cold is really important. Again, getting a good night's sleep will make all the decision making, all the riding, all the interacting with all the people that want to talk to you much easier. So, pillow, sleeping bag, tent.
Tell us about your clothes.
Yeah, I didn't bring much. I had no more than 2 pairs of pants. So one pant was my riding pants, which when I started was literally these pants. Not these pants exactly, but the same brand. They were blue. And then I switched over and Moscow Moto sponsored me with their Woodsman Enduro pants. Great pants, by the way, and you could wear them. They don't have built-in armor, so you have to have armor underneath, which is fine because I already did. But you can wear them as normal pants, which is really great. If you can have a pair of pants that you can just wear as your normal pants and your motorcycle pants, I really recommend. It cuts down a lot on space, and when you're doing long-term trips, it's really good. So, 2 pairs of pants. One of them was a motorcycle pant. One of them was just normal pair of pants so you can disguise yourself as a normal human being. Sometimes. I think 3 shirts. I had a no sleeve. I had a short sleeve. I had a t-shirt, a tank top, and a long sleeve. And that was mostly the long sleeve was just for the sun or like wearing while I was riding underneath all my armor. I had a jersey. I think I had 5 pairs of socks. Socks and underwear, don't skimp. Okay? Don't skimp on the socks and underwear. You can bring as many of those as you want. If you bring nothing else but socks and underwear, you'll be fine.
And your helmet. Could you tell us about your armor bridge? Like describe, you had separate armor, and then maybe talk about your Aerostitch jacket and suit and things like that.
Yeah. So I had for armor, I started out with an Aerostitch one-piece suit. How many people know what that is? A decent amount. So it literally looks like a pair of, was it overalls?
Coveralls.
Coveralls, yeah, it's like armored coveralls. And it's really great for like commuter stuff, which is what I'd sort of been doing up until that point. And it's, you know, you just put it on over your clothes, you're armored, you go. It's very easy, it's very quick. It doesn't really work for hot weather, and you get real sweaty because it's like you're wearing a plastic bag. And so I switched over to auxiliary armor. It's like separate armor to clothing. So I had a pair of knee pads. They were sort of like softer. I think they were by Denise. And those went with me the whole time. And then my upper body, I had force field armor, sort of the bigger, chunkier stuff. So it was like I had a chest pad, I had a full back pad, all the way down to the arms. And then over that I would wear the Moscow Moto Woodsman Enduro pants, and then I had their workhorse jersey, which the jersey it's reinforced a little bit on like the upper shoulders and then the arms, which is really good because most places that's where you hit and then you don't burn through your jersey right away. And then I went through a few helmets. I started with this weird fiberglass, not fiberglass, carbon fiber helmet from First Gear, thank you. This is why I picked her. From First Gear, and the glue ended up falling apart in that in like the first month. I didn't have that, and then I had a modular helmet from Nolan, and that one was pretty good, but it was too heavy. And then for the rest of the trip, I had a
carbon fiber.
Yeah, carbon fiber
from Denise.
Yes, but it was a racing helmet, and it was Denise had sponsored me, and it was what they sort of had at the time.
In Chile.
Yeah, in Chile. So it's really weird because I was wearing all this stuff like very clearly sort of enduro style gear. Like I had these giant boots that squeaked to hell. Like they were the loudest boots I've ever heard. And I was wearing them. So I would come into a border and and you could hear me. You would hear me like coming down the hall and everybody would be staring at me. And
there was one border guard and he looked at Bridget and he was like, didn't speak much English, but he said this in English. He said, "You are not a spy." I want to keep this moving, but if you could just go through like tools and kind of like your motorcycle things that you brought along for fixing them.
So I had a basic tool, and I customized it to have, I had two 10 millimeters. If you know, you know. But everything else, it was custom to the bike. So I had, you know, the right thing for pulling spark plugs. I had the right thing for adjusting my shock. And I just, other than the two 10s, I didn't have doubles of anything else. Now, one of the special things that I didn't think about before, but I ended up carrying with me, was a oil filter remover. You know, it has like the clamp and then you put it on there. Because, and this is, I think this is a really good idea, and I didn't understand it before I went. When you're changing oil filters, a lot of times you'll like stick a screwdriver through it and turn it. Well, oh no, you're in Baja, Mexico, and you just destroyed your last filter, and suddenly the new one doesn't fit. So, and I was in the situation, and I luckily didn't put a screwdriver through my filter, but I did get this tool because I wanted to be able to use it in the future, because you don't, most of the time when you change parts, you do have the chance to put the old one back on and make it a little further to somewhere where you may be able to find the correct part, but the oil filter is one of those things where you might destroy it. But I ended up buying a new oil filter. It didn't work, but it was fine because I could just take it off. And you can, you know, if you change the oil, you can still use that old oil filter for longer, and that's fine. What else was there?
You had like an
Oh, tools, that's what we were
Yeah,
talking
we were talking about tools,
Yeah, I went down a rabbit hole there. Anyway, so tools, I had 3 tire spoons. And if anyone has changed their motorcycle tires, they know why. 2 is for you, 1 is for the friend. No, but it's just a lot easier to get a little bit farther. So I had 2 like aluminum ones that were a little shorter, and they had the buster on them, so it's like, it sort of fits together like this, and you put it in there and you push them together, and it breaks the bead, which I thought was really nice. I luckily got them from my brother. But having something like that, anything that makes your life easier, there's a balance between what you can afford and what makes your life easier. And depending on, you know, how much you get sponsored, how much you have, how much you can get from your friends, that's going to change. But whenever you can make those two come closer together, yeah, great stuff. But that was pretty much it. I didn't have, you know, like I said, middle lister.
Yeah. Okay. I think we're ready to get into some of the meat of the trip, but I do want to do a sidebar. Bridget, do you want to tell the story of how we met? I get asked this often.
Yeah. Okay. So we didn't know each other at all. She met my mom at the Madeline Island Farmers Market. And my mom, as mothers do, had this whole billboard basically about her trip, my trip. Her trip, my trip. And she would tell anyone who would listen about me. And Kiva happened to be one of those people. And Kiva was, you had just gone to Mexico, and you wanted to go back, or you wanted to do a trip.
I was working remotely, I was about to get my motorcycle license, but I didn't have a motorcycle license. I didn't have a motorcycle, I didn't have a ton of experience riding motorcycles. I'd ridden, you know, a dirt bike a few times with my family. And I met Bridget's mom at the farmer's market, and she told me about your trip, and she told me that you were looking for other young women to accompany you.
This is a lie.
Which was a lie.
Straight up lie. My mom.
She was manifesting.
Yeah, my mom was looking for other people
to go
come with me.
Yeah, so she gave me your business card, and I sent you an email.
Yeah.
And then we met for the first time. Bridget worked on the Madeline Island Ferry. This was July of 2022. So I took a ferry ride and got to talk with Bridget for 30 whole minutes.
Not even, it was like 20 minutes.
Yeah, and by the end of that,
we were like, let's go!
Yeah, and then I think we met like 2 more times in person before we started traveling.
Because after that, I left in August, so I did a mini motorcycle trip to the East Coast, because I had a lot of friends on the East Coast, and then I met her for a night in that direction. And we talked around the phone quite a bit, and one of the things that I think she distinctly remembers me saying to her, and I distinctly remember saying was, Kiva, this is more serious than marriage.
You did say
that. Our lives.
You were like, it was everything you're not supposed to talk about. She was like, okay, politics, religion, medical problems. Like that was the start of the conversation.
I want to know the tea.
Yeah, so that's the story of how we met.
Yeah. And let me just reiterate for a second. She didn't have a motorcycle license. When we met, we got on the ferry and I was like, "Dad, do you have a motorcycle?" No. Do you have a motorcycle license? It's coming. Yeah, so she decided, and she was like, yeah, I just wanted to do Baja, and then Baja turned into Central America, and then Central America turned into South America, and then part of Europe.
Yeah.
So from literally, and this goes for any of you who don't think you're qualified, she literally started from 0 and went to South America. So any excuses you have, just go chuck them in the bin. Yeah!
Thank you. I have a lot of help from my friends and family, and I think about that all the time. Like it was really humbling to do something like that because you have to be in a position to know pretty much nothing about what you're doing and have everyone tell you what to do all the time and like really learn to swallow your own pride and like. But I could not have done it without people who told me what was wrong with my motorcycle or gave me tips on how to ride or like Bridget's infinite patience for every time I fell over trying to get to a backwards campsite. Turn around on the highway, anything like that.
Most of the time we fall over, it's literally just turning around.
Yeah, because people are like, oh, you fall over all the time, like that's terrible. Because we're open about it, we talk about it, especially me at the beginning and being a short person and all of that. But I was like, no, we're not like crashing on the highway. We fall over like going 10 miles an hour down a dirt road. And that's how it is.
Yep.
So, okay, Bridget, the trip was 451 days long, so I know you can't cover every moment of it, but could you give us an example of a day in the life or like a series of days in the life on the road?
Yeah, so my typical day, I tried to do around 300 kilometers a day, which I think is around 200 miles, give or take, and it also depended on where you were, road conditions. I would get up, relatively early, whatever camp spot you're in, unless it's a really officially designated camp spot, you might not be supposed to be there.
So, how often do you camp in officially designated camp spots?
Yeah. No, it would happen every once in a while. You would be at someone's house. So it did happen, but a lot of the time, it was just sort of wherever it was.
A field, a beach, a municipal park.
Under a table, on a table, in a tree. In
a gas station, bus stop.
Yeah. One of my favorite things to do was I had a hammock and I would put the motorcycle at the base of the tree and then I would climb up into the tree and hang the hammock up like 30 feet in the air. And there was also, I'll do this as a typical day. So I was in America and I would go, however many miles. You stop for food somewhere, try and find something good. And this is like, you don't have a destination. Sometimes I would have places that I wanted to go, places that I wanted to see. Or if I was, but that was typically stopped in one place. So we would stop in, say, was it Mexico? Where we went for, it was before Day of the Dead. It's where we met Mike.
Oh, San Luis Potosí.
Yeah, San Luis Potosí,
city in Mexico.
which is a really beautiful city in Mexico, and there is a lot of art museums there. So we stopped there, and we would go, we would see the town. It's a very beautiful town. There isn't as many tourism, so you get to see things sort of undisturbed.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're just traveling from day to day, the most exciting things you do is in the morning and at night, unless you run into something. So I would find, especially in America, I would find the weirdest places to sleep. Typically off the side of the road, or I would try and find bodies of water. It's a lot easier to camp for bodies of water. So I wake up in the morning, I look in the direction that I want to go, and I look for bodies of water.
That are approximately the distance away that you want to cover them.
Yes, approximately the distance away. I go towards them, and then let's say around 5-ish, I look at that again, and I'm like, okay, now this body of water is where I want to go, or this camp spot is where I want to go. So I go there, and this particular night, I did the thing where I climbed a big tree, and I put my little hammock in the big tree. And it was next to sort of this reservoir, and it was really, really beautiful. And I think about 11 at night, so it just gotten dark. I'm talking to my brother on the phone, and all of a sudden, I hear this whoosh, and I look over, and there is a giant owl in the tree. Yeah,
I haven't heard this story.
really? Yeah. So I look up, like, big, and I'm talking on the phone, and I look over, and I'm like, Michael, there's an owl in the tree. And the owl swivels around, and like, for a solid 3 seconds, just looks at me. And you know, it's an owl, but there was such a look of confusion on its face. Like, what is this? Who? Why? And it was really funny, and then it flew off. You know, it was like, there's a weird person in the tree in a little sack, but I don't want it. And there was actually, so it was their house, and I can come into their house. There was 2 owls in this tree. And that was, you know, that happened a lot. I would go somewhere and I would find animals. Frequently on our trip, we would camp places, and there would just be dogs, and the dogs would come up to you.
Summon an animal.
Yes, whenever I was camping, an animal would appear.
So did you have like an expectation of what traveling would be like, and how did that square with the reality of what it was like, or like what did it take for you to learn how to travel? Because you really hadn't done anything like that growing up. You know, you didn't take vacations with your family, you guys worked on a farm, like you told me the most vacation you ever took was going to grandma's house. So how did you adjust to life on the road?
It was really difficult. It was one of those things, I knew I didn't know what I was doing, so I sort of just jumped in, and I knew enough about myself that I would figure it out when it happened, but it was really difficult. Previous to that, all the traveling that I had been doing was from place to place. So like on that first trip, you know, 600 to 700 miles a day. Pretty much doing, I think I would take a 20-minute nap just to recharge, because I would wake up at, you know, 6 or 5 in the morning. So it was really difficult learning how to not ride my motorcycle and to stop places and see things and talk to people and do something other than look at the road, because you know, the road's pretty boring, and that's not what this sort of thing is about. You're not doing it to be on your motorcycle the whole time. And I think that was the hardest part. I think the second was being in all these big cities. And I didn't think it would bother me so much, but there was so many people. And I, you know, coming from up here or coming from even farther north, there's not a lot of people. And they're all wearing Carhartts and they all look the same. And all of a sudden you're in this area where you are the one that looks different. And now, you know, you are gringo. You have, you know, this is blonde hair to them. This. They would be like, yeah, the blonde haired girl. And I'm like, who are you talking about? And it was me. But having, you know, having blonde hair, having blue eyes, is you become the outsider. And sometimes I think that was one of the more difficult parts that I didn't realize, is that I would be the outsider and how much that could get to me. And then not being able to speak the same language. And not just for like communicating I found that actually being able to communicate what I needed was pretty easy. There's a lot that could be done between Google Translate and a bunch of grunting and hand gestures. But the thing I missed the most was just being able to casually talk with people, you know, compliment people on their boots, or their hair, or their nails, or, you know, being able to have just the little human connections. And there were still ways that I could do that, but it took me a long time to figure it out. So there was a period, I think, specifically in like Mexico, Central America, when I was very lost. I didn't know how to sustain the adventure, and I felt the responsibility to be amazed all the time. And that's not sustainable. You can't think every single amazing thing you think is amazing, because after a while, it doesn't matter how many beautiful mountains you see, it just turns into another mountain. So you have to give yourself a break.
Yeah, I think we almost had like a role reversal, because we'll talk about this, like at the beginning of the trip, you wanted to ride 800 miles a day and never stop and sleep in the ditch and eat every meal at the gas station. And like I was more used to traveling in this conventional sense, and I was like, let's go see the volcano, like let's go to the art museum. And then by the end of the trip, you had really like kind of come around to slowing down and talking to people and seeing things.
Yeah,
and I was
called
like,
it my chill girl era.
Oh, your chill girl era, yeah, you were in your chill girl era. Drafting trucks on the highway, not trying to overtake them all the time. You were in your chill girl era, and I was like, I can't see another thing, like I must be broken, because you do really like run out of stamina, especially we're not like made to see the whole world so quickly. So that is like a unique challenge. And I wanted to talk to you about this too, about like expectation versus reality from other people, because a lot of people will look at something like the trip that you took and say, congratulations on your 14-month vacation around the world, and of course it's such a privilege to be able to do something like that. But can you talk a little bit about the like day-to-day reality, how it feels to be on the road all the time for so long with so much uncertainty?
Yeah, it's not a vacation. Just in case you missed it, it's nothing close. There are certain points on the trip where you sort of take a vacation from the trip, but it's hard, especially with the not being able to stay in one place for more than 2 weeks. And I don't think we even got close to that 2-week mark more than twice in 450 days.
Yeah.
So oftentimes I was very stressed about, especially the Middle East. South America, you know, I feel like South America was pretty chill, but even then, every day, almost, you're worrying about where can I sleep, where can I find food, you know, water, gas. Clean water, gas, like all of these basic things that in America we take for granted. Clean water, places to sleep, food that most of the time is going to poison you. And it was, parts of it was very stressful, and also you get hurt. Like I crashed, I got hit by a car, I messed up my knee really badly, it still feels, there it's clicking. And I threw out my back, like, and this all happened within a pretty small chunk of time, like from Colombia to Chile, which was probably
a matter of weeks.
Yeah, a matter of weeks. I had thrown out my back, I had really messed up my knee, I had gotten hit by a car, I had gotten a concussion. Again, I've had several in my life. And every time you have a concussion, it makes it easier to get the next one. It's like frostbite. And I was tired. Like in Santiago, Chile, was the first time that it really hit me that all I wanted to do was go home. I just wanted to rest. I didn't, obviously. And I did sort of give myself a little pep talk and sort of get back on the metaphorical bike,
And the literal.
And the literal bike. But it is hard, and you reach the bottom of your barrel, and then you go through the bottom of the barrel, and then you just don't know what to do. And the thing that kept me going was, there was two things. That was one of them. And I wanted to be the sort of person that would see it through. Like at the end of the day, I have to live with myself. And I want to be the sort of person that can get it done. And those are the things that kept me going. But you don't see that on Instagram. You know, and I tried to be really open with what was happening to us. Like, we got robbed, you know, and I put that out there. And I didn't want it to be like clickbait, you know, like, oh, we got robbed, blah, 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 blah. But I wanted people to understand that this sort of thing, it's not like the idealized pixie house that you see in social media a lot. It's hard, and get ready for it to get harder. But with all of that, it is hands down the most amazing thing you could ever possibly do with your life. And you will learn much. You have the opportunity to teach yourself, to teach other people, to help other people find directions in their lives. So it's a great opportunity, but it's hard.
Yeah. I feel like we should segue into the getting robbed just briefly, because there's something that, like, I don't know, a lot of people will hear about what Bridget and I did and say, oh, you're so brave, like, isn't the world dangerous? And, like, something that we started to say was, like, if you believe that the world is a scary and dangerous place, then you will go and you will find a scary and dangerous place. But if you believe that people are good, and I think I do, and I hope you do, and I hope you guys do too, you'll go out and you'll find good people. And the only reason that we got robbed, which is something that I've barely heard of happening to any other motorcyclist, and it was really the only, like, it was the only bad thing that happened to me, like dangerous thing that happened to me after 8 months of traveling by motorcycle. But the only reason that happened was because we had eased up after 6 months of absolutely no problems with anyone, and you know, feeling very safe most of the time, and never having our bikes touched or anything stolen or anything like that. So we don't mean to mention that to say that you are guaranteed scary and dangerous things when you leave. You are only guaranteed those things if you believe that you will find them.
Also, if you're dumb.
Well, too.
Okay, let me explain.
We did make a dumb decision.
So, yeah, like people, the local people, it doesn't matter what you do. You don't look like you come from there. So people will tell you. And, you know, they didn't tell us because we didn't ask.
Warn you, yeah.
Yeah, but if if you're going down a road and you get this feeling, and you really develop a sixth sense about what you're supposed to be doing and where you're supposed to be going. If you get a feeling, that might be your subconscious processing information that you aren't aware of. Let's call it that. Stop. If you camp for a night and you're like, move. You know, don't be lazy, move. And people will tell you, you know, ask. Yeah. It makes it a lot easier for people to tell you if you ask them.
Well, when I first met you, I think I was like a lot of other people being like, oh, aren't you worried about safety on this trip? And I asked you, like, what's your safety plan? And you said to me, I'm gonna read the room. And I like remember talking to my dad and being like, she said her safety plan is reading the room. What are we supposed to do about that? And she told me she has a machete, but like reading the room. But
I did.
You know, but after the whole thing, I'm like, that is really you knew it from the start. Like, and you talk to anyone else too. Like, that is really one of the greatest safety plans you can have, is being attentive to your surroundings and reading the room.
Yeah, well, and also, like, you don't learn how to read the room from nothing. You have to teach yourself how to look for the signs that are like, yes, this is a safe place. How are they talking to you? What are they looking at when they're talking to you?
Yeah.
Like all of these things. And most people are genuine and they are curious and they want to help you. And frankly, they're too preoccupied with you being a woman on a motorcycle to think about doing anything else weird.
Sometimes, yeah.
Sometimes.
Wait, what happened when you got robbed?
That's Kiva's dad, by the way.
Thanks, Dad. When we were robbed, we were in San Pedro de Atacama, which is in the desert in Chile, and we had gone, thank you, Bridget will illustrate, maybe not. We had gone into a town called Calama, which is just kind of a bigger city in northern Chile, and went to a very nice looking grocery store. We had a really hard time
Yumbo.
it's called Yumbo. We had a really hard time finding grocery stores like the type we're used to when we were in Mexico and Central America, and they started to show up again in South America. So we were very excited, too excited. We were like, they have goat cheese. Maybe I was like, they have goat cheese. So we left both of our motorcycles in the parking lot at noon on a Saturday, out of a very busy parking lot, and went inside the grocery store. And Bridget left after about 30 minutes. She checked out first and came back in, and I was still at the grocery store checkout. And she was like, Kiva, did you take all of the bags off of your bike?
So I had come out early
Yeah.
because I was going to eat, and I sat down next to the motorcycle, and I was literally eating for probably like 2 or 3 minutes before realizing, looking over at Kiva's bike, and being like, where are her bags? And then it started, like the wheels started turning, the momentum started going, and I ran back inside, and I asked, oh my, look at the service.
Thank you.
And I went back inside and I asked Kiva, I was like, she said, did you take your bags out? Did you move them? And I literally watched Kiva's brain break. And it was, to this day, one of the most horrible things I've ever seen. And we ran out to the bikes. We just left the cart there.
Yeah.
And we ran out to the bikes, and of course, her bags were gone. And it
Your
was,
tank bag was gone.
yeah, my tank. The only thing they took, so her setup, Kiva's a very neat and organized person, and her motorcycle reflects this. Mine looks like a dyslexic monkey strapped a bunch of bananas to the back of a fish tank.
But like her motto, Bridget, is like, why could I put it in a bag if I could tie it onto the outside bag?
More space, utilizing all the space. So mine was dirty, and there's a bunch of, if anyone's familiar with the Reckless 80 from Moscow Moto, there's straps everywhere, and there's all of this. And it's, unless you know what you're doing, and you've seen it before, it's very hard to unstrap it. So hers got stolen because it looked neat and orderly, and mine didn't, because it looked like shit. So.
Yeah, I'm like running through my memories of that day. Yeah, I mean, you can imagine like being in South America. I never thought I would make it to South America. I didn't know if I would make it to the end of Baja. I remember like sitting down and like going through the few $1,000s I had and being like, I don't know if this is enough to get to the end of Baja. And Bridget likes to joke about how I live off of the idea of money. I'm a big hustler with like remote work and stuff like that. So I was, it had made it to South America, and then like everything I had been taken besides like my passport and the things I had on me.
And some stuff that was really meaningful to
Yeah,
you,
exactly. I think that was like the bigger issue when all of my things were stolen. It was not so much that I had like this huge attachment to them as stuff, but that they had been, because I had like left for this trip basically a month after I met you, had basically everything had been loaned from my family. And my friends, so, and yeah, it was their things, and then it was also like all of our memories to that point. I was like, we were in this tent, or it was like this sleeping bag, like everything was just tied up.
There was also, in Bolivia, there was, like, we went to the salt flats, and there's the Dakar salt sculpture, and there was this guy by the Dakar salt
monument,
monument,
the Dakar monument,
that would take pictures of you and print them out just there for you to take. And we had this really great picture of me and her.
And some friends, I think.
I think it was just me and you.
Oh, you're right.
On the salt flats in Bolivia, and it was in her jacket, and her jacket got stolen. And we don't have any pictures of this. I remember, we remember what it looks like.
Yeah.
But that was,
like that,
an example of, this isn't, it's not on the internet. There's no backup. There's no secondary. You can't buy another one.
So we had a few days in Kalama to be devastated and
look around in trash.
And go walk around the neighborhood and look at piles of trash, being like, maybe they threw away all my motorcycle gear, which is totally useless to them, but really important to me. I remember crying a lot, and I remember the security guard at the grocery store like seeing me crying and not really knowing what to do, and just giving me a fist. He gave me a fist bump. And I was like, that
makes it better.
That was all I needed, thank you.
It did genuinely cheer her up.
It made me really happy.
She was obsessed with fist bumps for a while after that. I think it was sort of a trauma response
to the fist bumps.
But I do want to continue with that, because after that happened, like I immediately we did not have a way to make up the money that it would take to get that stuff back. So I did some crowd sponsorship, aka fundraising, and I set up a GoFundMe for Kiva, and literally within 2 days,
Yeah.
we
Like
had
exceeded, yeah.
yeah. I had all of the money that we needed to replace all her gear. There was WEMA, which is helping with the acronym.
So we got a Facebook message from a woman named Linda, who's part of the Women's International Motorcycle Association, and she said, we saw that you guys got robbed, and we know how hard it is to ship things to South America, and we are coming to Santiago, which was not far from us at that time, in 10 days to do a motorcycle tour in Patagonia. Can we bring anything to you? And that was like really incredible, and with the help of our families, because Linda lives in Minnesota, got all of my replacement gear and the few things that Bridget needed to Linda, and then she and some other WEMA members brought them on the airplane to Santiago. We met them at the airport on their like very short layover on their way to Patagonia, and that was pretty amazing.
And they also, like my sponsor, Moscow Moto, stepped up and gave her completely new replacement gear, and the community literally just fell on us with support. And that's, I think, really a special thing about the motorcycle world is, you know, everybody knows that it's hard, and everybody knows that if you're on a motorcycle, you're a little special. And, you know, there's that bond there, and when someone else on a motorcycle is in trouble, whether it's, you know, a motorcyclist on the side of the road, you stop. That's what you do.
Yeah.
And so that's what happened here, is we were on the side of the road broken down, and the motorcycle world gave us a new tire, and then we were going.
Bridge, yeah, I want to get into that because you talked about like when you were struggling after challenges, you thought about like the community that was supporting you and how it wasn't just your trip anymore, right? Like there were so many people behind you, it meant something to other people than you. So can you kind of get into, this is related to that, everybody wants to know, how do you pay for a trip like this? It's a great question, honestly, but in the interest of being transparent, I want you to give us some information about your personal saving money and then your sponsorships and fundraising and things like that.
So the stats were this. I had skimped and saved around $14,000 from my own personal money to be able to do this, and I had set up, I knew that I couldn't have a remote job. I'm not geared for that sort of thing. I'm very heavily dyslexic, and this is something that doesn't come out a lot. I am pretty much the reading ability. My 6-year-old niece can read better than I can. So it's a big problem, which makes remote work pretty much impossible for me. And also I can't sit down long enough. It's just not, I can't. So I knew that there wasn't really a way for me to support myself on the trip. And you know, with the Guinness record, not being able to stay in one place for more than 2 weeks. So I set up a fundraiser, and I was really, before I did that, I didn't want to, because there's a lot of stigmatism about asking for help, especially asking for monetary help. And I had one of my best friends, Bronte, who in my other job, a sailor, and he was talking to me, he's like, it's not about you. If people want to help you, stand back, let them help you. It's not for you, it's for them. So I was like, fine, okay. And I did it, and I set up GoFundMe, I think it was around 10,000, and that was with initially going through Russia, because that was my plan, to go through Russia. And it was, you know, there was a lot of friends, like personal friends that were like, yeah, we'll do it. And there was also people that would like sponsor me with enough to get like a certain piece of gear that I would need. And this is before I was cool, you know, before I'd done anything. And then in Mexico, there was an article that came out about me on CNN. It just was off to the races. And suddenly there was all these people from the motorcycle world, from the boat world, from the adventure world that suddenly thought my adventure was worth supporting. And it was very conflicting, and I had a lot of imposter syndrome, and I still do, with being like, I don't deserve this, you know? This is so much. Like, there are other things that deserve it more. And you know, I still struggle with that. I'm like, why am I worth this? And I just go back to what he said, it's not about me. It's about them. If they want to do it, that's up to them. I'm not foisting it upon anyone.
But I also want to interject because I think about this a lot too. It's not about you, but it also is about you because I think about like what you did, going to 45 countries, going around the world, and I'm like, if we could send one person to 45 countries to represent the United States, like, I don't know anyone else besides Bridget who I would like want it to be.
She's never said this before.
I have said it to other people, maybe I haven't said it to you, but yeah.
I do want to, you know, I don't think I'll ever truly get over sort of the imposter syndrome, but I respect what my close friends say, and the people in your life are a reflection of you. And if they're good people and they think you are good people, you're probably doing something right. That's it. But touching on the like representing America, that's real. Everywhere I went, I was the American. Like in Iran, there's the Taftan border, which is the border between Iran and Pakistan. And they have a record of everyone that goes through there. I was the only American that anybody could remember going through that border. At least for the last 8 years, I was the only one. So there was a lot of these places where they've never seen an American before. So I felt a lot of pressure to conduct myself responsibly and not be a dick.
I want to get into that, Bridge, because so you didn't anticipate going through Iran. It wasn't part of the original plan. So can you talk about kind of like needing to change your route and figuring out how to change it on the road, and then kind of like who helped you to figure out the way to go when certain options weren't available?
Yeah, so originally I was planning on going from like Turkey up
Through Georgia. Right?
Yeah, through Georgia, and then across to Russia, sort of like South Korea.
Okay.
Yeah, like going to Vladivostok, that's what it was. Vladivostok,
Russia,
and then taking a boat to South Korea and then going home from there. But, of course, things escalated there. And Guinness basically told me, you can't go through Russia anymore. While in Buenos Aires, Argentina. So literally I had done all of South America being like, yeah, okay, I have a visa. I had a Russian visa. I was set, you know, gonna go there, gonna get through. One country, all the way.
No border, well, you had the visa, the one big old country versus like, I don't know, 15 separate countries with separate visas and separate borders.
Yeah, and I timed the weather out correctly, so I would be there in like a pretty moderate time of the year for Russia. I wasn't gonna freeze. And then I couldn't do that anymore. So I had to figure out where I was going to go. In China, it is so difficult and so expensive, thousands upon thousands of dollars to get through China. And you have to have a special driver's license that they have to give you. You have to have a guide the whole time. It's like confetti in the air. It's just stuff raining down on you all the time. So I ended up with this route, but that meant that I had to go through like the Middle East in August.
The hottest part of the world and the hottest month of the year.
Yeah. So when I was it was pretty much around the hundreds every single day or more.
What was like the maximum kind of temperature that you were experiencing?
130.
Wow. Fahrenheit, yeah.
Bread rises at 130.
I was like a little loaf of bread, me and some fried chicken.
But yeah, it was so hot, and I had never experienced that sort of heat before. And that's like aside from just finding out how to do the route. Now, luckily, I am part of a really great community that loves sharing. So there is this really, really lovely, amazing, God, I love them, Canadian couple called Kira and Brendan Hacks?
Adventure hacks.
Yeah, Adventure
on
Hacks
social
on
media.
And they had just done what I was planning on doing. They had just gone through the Middle East, and they had a guy in Iran, technically he was in Spain, but he's Iranian, that Matt Cheeky, that set me up with a visa. He ended up coming with me, super nice guy. I was spent 5 days in Iran, and it's really monitored for getting through that country. You have to, pre-arrival, submit a route, say where you're going to sleep every day, say the route that you're going to go every day, and you have to have a guide with you the whole time. So, and once you get into the country, you can change it like up till that point. They have to approve it, but you can change it. But once you're in the country, you can't change it. You can't go off and visit someone else's house unless it's like very much in the area that you're already in. You can't go exploring. So I was lucky enough to have Matt with me, and he would be in like a taxi, and I would go, and I couldn't stop for very long because like a crowd of people would come and start talking to me and start trying to find out what I was doing. And there are secret police everywhere, and there was once that I got followed, and there are checkpoints, and this guy that I recognized from earlier, I came over to the guy that would stop you, and he was like talking to me, he was pointing at me, and I just went through. I was like, nope. And he sort of like half-heartedly tried to grab me, and I was like, shit, I'm out.
Sometimes that works, surprisingly.
Yeah.
Like, just drive away.
This
is not legal advice.
No. Certainly not in America. But this was something I would say a lot, just proceeding with confidence.
Yeah.
And that really gets you out of a lot of situations.
It does. Yeah. Okay, I want to be mindful of time, but because we have motorcyclists in the audience, another reason you were going to go through Russia is something called the Carnet de Passage. So do you want to kind of talk about how that featured into your planning?
So a Carnet de Passage is like a passport for your motorcycle, and you have to put a certain amount of money down in bond, and a certain amount of money you get back. So you pay for some of it, and then the rest is the deposit, and you get back. But it can be a lot of money. I think it was $5,000.
For you, but
Yeah.
it's based on the value of your motorcycle.
Yes.
And
So the more expensive your motorcycle is, the more expensive that is. And you have to stamp it, just like a passport, you have to stamp it in and out. And Russia does not require this. But Saudi Arabia, Oman, UAE, Pakistan, Iran, all require it, and you cannot go through these countries without having it. And so this other route that suddenly got, I love this word, foisted upon me was so much more complicated and so much more difficult, but still worked. And that is something else that happened over and over and over on this trip, was all of a sudden there was this giant iceberg of a problem in front of me, and something would happen. And I would meet someone that suddenly made it into a tiny little iceberg. Icebergs melt, people. Science.
So Bridget, this is the question. It's a question, the woman question. What is it like to travel the world as a woman, as a young woman? Isn't it dangerous? Like, shouldn't you be with a man? Tell us about your experiences as a woman.
A lot of times they just thought I was a man anyway, so it's fine. To be fair, I think it's a lot easier. I think there are unique dangers presented to you as traveling as a woman, as traveling alone as a woman. But people want to take care of you, and that can make life a lot easier. And if you're, this is kind of controversial, but if you're sweet and back your eyelashes, a lot can happen, and you can get a lot done. Be careful, like I said, like read the room on how much you want to use that. But, people do, they want to take care of you, they're worried about you. And so they want to help you, whatever you need, and a lot of them are dads.
There are a lot of dads in the world.
There are a lot of dads in the world, and when they look at you, they see their daughter, and they want to help you, but they also, they understand how concerned your father is, and they want to help you. So I do think it's easier. It is, I think the most difficult thing is the same thing that's helpful, is trying to convince people that you're fine by yourself, that it isn't as bad as people think it is, and that you know what you're talking about. So here's a really great example. The first time I tried to fix my crash bars was in Chile? Santiago? Chile?
No, it was in Lima, Peru.
Lima, Peru. Okay. Lima, Peru, I had just had like a pretty big crash in the mountains, and one half of my crash bars had been like pulled back and broken. And so we went to this shop in hopes to find a welder or find something to bend it back and sort of make it better. And I basically asked, like, can I use your tools? Which is, you know, a bit of a stretch, and they just, no. They were like, absolutely not. So I asked, can I be there while they're working on it? Sure, okay. So the guy was sort of, what was it? It was Juan, yeah, Juan was working on it, and it was very clear that he didn't quite know what was happening. And this comes back, proceed with confidence. I just took the tool. And Juan, instead of me being Juan's assistant, Juan was my assistant. And they gave me, they were so excited. They thought
Once
it was
they
so
saw you
cool.
were competent.
Yeah, once they saw that I know what I was doing, they gave me the Hefe pipe. It was literally this giant pipe, and we used it to sort of bend things back. And it was just great fun. But it was also like, as a woman, you have a unique challenge of not looking like the typical sort of person that would know what they were doing. And it doesn't do you any good to argue with them, especially if you can't speak their language. But it does you a lot of good to be patient and to stick around until you can show them. Because that's the universal language, is showing them that you know what you're doing and showing them that you can do it. And then that's the end of, they can't argue with that. They can't argue with reality. What are they gonna do?
Yeah.
Stop the mic. Tell them to go home.
All that to say, don't count yourself out for being a woman, because it's just different. It's not good, it's not bad, it's just different.
It is, I do feel like a difficulty that women have is they're expected to do things in the same way that men are supposed to do things, or the way that men do things. You just can't. Like, unless you're a giant woman who has, 1,300 pounds of muscle.
Is this a giant woman?
Is this a giant woman? I can't do things the same way as a man can do them. But it just means I have to use my brain and figure out a different way to do it. It doesn't mean I can't do it, but it does mean I have to do it differently. And maybe me doing it differently doesn't look like the best way to do it to a man.
You're gonna do it anyways.
I'm gonna do it anyway. Hold my Sprite. Watch this.
So, Bridge, I want you to tell us a little bit about your final ride home at the end of the trip, and your homecoming party, and then just kind of adjusting to life after this giant adventure.
So,
set the scene.
I'm in Malaysia with Main Freight. Main Freight is a moving company. They, I found this out later, are typically do things for big companies. So they're used to working with like big shipments of things. Tiny motorcycle! So we had spent days going back and forth trying to figure out when the motorcycle needed to get there, when it was going to get to where I wanted to go. And the problem was, and we didn't figure this out until later, they were yes men. Even if it wasn't going to happen, they would say it would happen. So I got there. First of all, I got there in the rain. And I sat in the rain for about 2 hours before they finally came and took my motorcycle back. And then it was 2 days later until they put it in a crate. And the measurements that it was a separate crating company. They hired a crating company to come and crate my bike. The crate that they had was twice the size of the crate that it was supposed to be, because I collapsed my bike, because I'm cheap. So I took the front wheel off, you put it by the side, you take the windscreen off, and then you take the handlebars off. And you collapse all of that. And so the front of your bike is now a lot shorter. And it fits in a nice, cozy space. It's twice the size they had done. Like, it was like a mansion for my motorcycle. First class. It would have been, instead of $4,000, it would have been $8,000 if I hadn't been there and been on top of things. So it was just complicated. And this just kept coming up over and over again with this company. I left, or I had been scheduled to leave, and I was scheduled to come home on the 4th of
Your
November.
homecoming party.
Yeah, my homecoming party was on November 4th, and I had set this up because everybody wanted a homecoming party, and I wanted to see everybody. So I found out, literally, as we were creating it, and it was supposed to leave the next day, that the crate was the wrong size, and it needed to be done, so it was set back a day for that. And then, that it was going to take 2 days to ship. So it got to Vancouver. I went to Vancouver, and then it didn't get there. Was it only 2 days to ship? I think it was longer than that.
No, I think I got to Vancouver on November 1st.
Yeah.
And then your party was on the 4th.
Yeah.
So you were in Vancouver. Motorcycles in Vancouver. We were all waiting for you in northern Wisconsin.
Yeah.
So how did you make it from Vancouver to northern Wisconsin in 3 days? 2.5 days.
So I got, like she said, the motorcycle is in Vancouver. It's in a box. Luckily, the Canadians, and in true Canadian fashion, were very nice. And they said, all right, we're going to get you out of here. And even the inspector, like they inspect it for dirt and stuff. And normally they'd tell you, come back the next day, you'll have it the next day. He was like, clearly, you're in a bit of a rush. We'll speed this up for you. And within 20 minutes, it was done. So I literally tore the box apart like a cat going into kibble and reassembled my motorcycle, put the front wheel on, did all this stuff, got gas, and luckily I was hosted by a very lovely woman in Vancouver, Sabine, who is French, Canadian, don't call her French Canadian. But she was very nice and she had like gas for me and whatnot. But that first day, I think I only made it 400 miles. And then the next day, I think I made it 600 miles?
Yeah.
So I was in the last day, November 3rd. I was going to Duluth. Yeah, because the 4th is the next day.
Yeah.
So I was going to Duluth, Minnesota, and I was in
Montana.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Bozeman.
Sure.
I was in Bozeman, Montana, I believe.
Okay, so you were supposed to arrive in Duluth that night.
Yes.
So I had planned to meet you at this motel in Duluth, and then I was with your boyfriend, who had flown in from the UK.
He's from the UK.
So we were waiting at this motel for bridge, and you could have like woken up at the ass crack of dawn and continued the rest of the way in the morning on the day of the homecoming party. But Rory and I were standing there, and we had not a single doubt in our minds. We were like looking at each other like, you think Bridge is gonna make it? Yeah, Bridge is gonna make it. Like,
yeah.
And she got to the motel after midnight, frozen solid. You could tell the rest of what happened on that day, but there was no doubt that Bridget was gonna make it.
So this is like fortuity sort of follows travelers around. So I wasn't sure, the previous day, I wasn't sure where I was going to camp that night because I was trying to make it as far as I possibly could. And I get a call from my cousin who's in Bozeman. And he's like, hey, by the way, this cousin that I hadn't seen in 5 years. He's like, I have a girlfriend who's a cook and would love to make you dinner. I have a cat, and by the way, this is the cutest kitten I've ever seen. I have a place for you. So we head to Bozeman, and I had a documentary crew with me at the time, just for America, and that'll come up later. But, you know, all of a sudden I had this nice, warm place to stay, and the previous night I camped in the rain, and it was very soggy. So I managed to dry out, and then the next morning I think I woke up at like 4:30, and me and the documentary crew started heading east. And it's Montana, and it's cold, and it's November, so it's literally snowing. And there were portions that I couldn't see more than 100 feet in front of me because it was snowing and it was fog and I was just... And it's very late. I think the last 2 hours it was -10. And I'm just like, I'm not stopping. I'm so close, I can't. I do not want to sleep in the dirt. I want to see Kiva. I want to see my boyfriend. I just can't be asked. And then we went to the wrong place. I had put in Duluth, previously I'd done my captain's class in Duluth, and I had put 2 pins where I'd done my captain's class, and then I put another pin for the hotel that they were at, and I hit the wrong one. So we get to this place that I had my captain's class, and I am
midnight.
At midnight, I am just so over it. I am cold, I have frostbite, I'm just done. And I sat in the car for a minute and warmed things up, and we figured out where they were, and I start going, and I was
Not going the speed limit.
And the 2 poor Canadian documentary crew people were behind me, and I haven't had a functioning tail light since Germany.
and we're going, and I am going
70 and a 45. In the middle of the night in November.
and a cop pulls over the 2 Canadian people. And was like, so you know anything about this motorcycle without a taillight that just went speeding by at like 70? And they sort of explained, and you know, key to the Midwest, they let the Canadians go. Meanwhile, I found Kiva and Rory, and I was very happy.
Bridget arrives at the motel. I haven't seen Bridget, Rory and I haven't seen Bridget since we saw her in Bulgaria. You've crossed the Middle East. You went through 130-degree heat. You got so hot you couldn't eat for a while. Like, you had all
I
these
lost a lot of weight.
trials and tribulations, and we're seeing you for the first time in many months. And like, we have our big reunion, and guess who isn't there? The Canadian documentary film crew.
Who wanted to document
to
it.
film the reunion. So.
Yeah, but I
They were talking to the cops.
Yeah, they were talking, and it was really funny because I was like, I wonder where they went.
You were very nonchalant about it. You were like, they're just not here. Okay, Bridget, we have reached the end of our speaking time, so this is my final thing that I want to ask you about. I want to reiterate to the crowd that the statistics for Bridget's around the world, hopefully Guinness World Record setting circumnavigation pending
We have to submit the
pending
stuff.
approval of the records. She rode over 50,000 miles through 45 countries, requiring 12 visas. It took 14 months, 451 days. So Bridget, what is your advice to others who would like to take an adventure, big or small?
Be patient. The iceberg will melt. The giant, I like that new analogy.
It's a good one.
The big problem that you see in front of you will most likely either solve itself or you will keep moving. You'll find a resource that will help you solve it. And also, just don't wait so long. This is for starting the trip. Don't wait so long that it becomes this giant thing in your head that's impossible to do. Go into it so fast that if you don't know it's impossible, it makes it a lot easier to do. And that's sort of I feel like my mantra is why not? And once you do...
How hard can it be?
Yeah,
That's your mantra.
And you don't need to go in, you know, head first into the shallow end. You can start with a little trip. I think, but for this level of trip, talk to people that have done it. Talk to people that have done it recently if you can. Find resources. They will help you because all of their resources, they'll share. Man, they would love, I guarantee you, anybody who's done a trip like this would love to help you.
Ask us.
Yeah, ask us. I'm around. That sort of thing. And just, you know, it doesn't have to be a big deal. Try not to overpack. You'll just be carrying it around. You don't need a poop shovel. You just go. Dig a hole with your foot. That's what your boots are for.
All right. On that note, that's our time.
Yeah.
And we are happy to welcome questions from the audience. We have another 25 minutes to do that. So, yeah.
Where's the craziest place you slept?
I feel like there's somewhere crazier though.
Quito is maybe the most beautiful,
Yeah.
which is like a crater lake in Ecuador that used to be a volcano, and it's now like a
So there's
crater lake. You can camp right on the
This is the one that jumps to mind, and this isn't. I don't know if it's a craziest. Aaron, you can, if you have one that you're thinking of.
Did you ever sleep in an abandoned bus or?
No.
There was the abandoned gas station,
There was
yes,
an abandoned gas
which
station.
was, we were using an application called iOverlander,
Mhm.
and it would show you wild camp spots and things. So one of them was called abandoned gas station, and we were like, that sounds semi-structural. It's really windy in Patagonia. It's a big
Yeah.
problem.
Trees grow sideways.
It really weighs on your ears after a while. So we were like, yeah, we could sleep indoors. So we got there, and that was great. We were walking around for a while, then we realized this actually isn't an abandoned gas station. There's someone who's living here, and he was very nice. And I speak Spanish. I was talking to him, and he was telling me he had been hired by some company that they wanted to turn into a restaurant or whatever. But yeah, he unlocked all the doors for us, let us in, locked all those doors right back up, and said, "See you in the morning."
Yeah, and he was a lot more paranoid than me, which is probably good. And she was like, okay, if he wants to kill us, if I make him dinner, he won't want to kill us.
He'll think we're humans. That was
Yeah,
my
she was
strategy.
like, how do we make us into people? So she made him dinner.
Yeah.
It was, I don't remember what it was.
I made us all soup, and
Yeah.
it was great. We didn't get killed. And
We didn't get killed.
we had a good night of
It was
sleep
lovely night.
indoors. So yeah, that was maybe one of the crazier places.
Okay.
All right, if anybody else has any questions, I have a mic here that I can pass your way. Maybe.
Or not. I think,
Maybe shout it out.
yeah, I think
Yeah,
shout is
it's a
fine. It's a
small
small
enough
room. Okay.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, go ahead.
What happened to your witness book that got stolen?
Hey, I know you. Before I even started my trip, she took some pictures of me that are really awesome that were up in the slideshow earlier, and I love her to death. And she also introduced me to square cheese squares. Well, square fried cheese squares. Anyway, that's not important. Witness book. Okay. I had a witness book. It's one of the requirements for Guinness, where I would meet people and I would be like, can you sign my witness book? And they would say like where they met me, who they were, contact information, that stuff. It got stolen in Chile. So after that, I had to make a new one. I basically started from where it was before, and I actually need to contact you because you met me on the trip. And I started from scratch. The first person I met after that, I just had them start signing it again. So there's a new one now. Luckily, there's a fair bit of people that I met before the book got stolen that I still have their contact information from other places. So I can sort of recreate a timeline previously.
Yeah.
So, next.
Were you first?
So other than having to cross two oceans, you must have had to encounter a lot of waterways that you had to navigate across. So did any of your nautical experiences come in handy?
Most of them weren't deep enough. No. But there was a really ironic water crossing that I did, where it was really tame, but I didn't take anything off my bike. I hadn't been doing a ton of water crossings at the time. I think it was in South America, in Argentina. And I hit a big boulder and I fell over. And I got the bike out and blah, 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 and some people helped me. And one of them was this really nice couple with a little baby, and the mom had like a little baby on her chest. And she's like, there's a bridge over there. And I literally look over and sort of like poke my head up to the side, and there's literally, it's a smaller, but there was literally a bridge. And I was like, okay. I took the bridge on the way back.
Bridge, where did your nautical skills come in handy on the trip? How did it?
Can someone put the fender up? It's on that table over there. Could you bring it up here for a minute? And feel free, anyone who wants it. So this is the fender from the front of my motorcycle. This was there the whole time. And you can't really see it very well, but on the inside of this, it is in 3 pieces. And it's stitched together it's called seine twine. And on tall ships, which is the particular type of boats that I work on, think Pirates of the Caribbean, they're held together by this stuff. Quite literally. And I brought a roll of it on my trip, and there was a lot of things on my motorcycle that I either fixed with seine twine, like this, or I use them to hold other things together, and that was something that directly corresponded. I started adventuring in tall ships. Before that, I barely had left the 2 or 3 states around me, and then I went to Washington State to work on a boat called the Lady Washington, and that was when adventures started for me. So there was quite a bit of tall ships that sort of carried through to all the motorcycling. But anyone, I'll have this brought back up there. You can, it's not super fragile, don't throw it on the ground, but
Can you give us the story of the paint job?
yeah, totally. So this is from Pakistan, and we'll start these pictures rolling again after the talk. So all of the trucks in Pakistan, they're not like the trucks here that are very generic and white. They're all covered in this stuff. Entire trucks. And it looks just like this. So I saw that and I was like, I want it. So I had a friend who is a local from the area, and she's a motorcycle tour guide. Alex, I think? Yeah, Alex. And she reached out to me on something else, and I was like, hey, your bike is painted just like this. Where did you get it done? And so she gave me the contact information of this gentleman, and I went over, and I had this painted, and then I had my front windscreen painted. And the front windscreen now has a pair of, they always have eyes, because you know it's in the Middle East, you don't get any other part of the women, you get their eyes. And they're always like, they're showing off their lady's eyes. They're like, my woman's eyes are prettier than your woman's eyes. But it's also, it's sort of like superstition, you know, you have people, you have these eyes looking out for you. They're scaring off danger. But I just thought that was so super cool. This is one of the coolest things I own, hands down. Not only because of the painting on it, but because I fixed it and it stayed fixed. And I fixed it in a way that was sort of intricate to my history. And so the way I fixed it is fun, and I'm sort of getting off on a tangent, bear with me. I didn't have a drill. I had my my pocket knife. And also, you know, for people starting,
The worst tool for every job.
The worst tool for every job. So this is a Leatherman. It's like the minimalistic one. There's pliers, obviously. There's a bottle opener. There's these reversible heads for a screwdriver, like an Allen and a flathead. And then there's a knife, which is on the outside, which I think is really nice. So I took my Leatherman knife and I basically put it down and I just drilled holes, like hundreds of holes in this thing. And then I stitched it together. No glue. There's no glue involved in this. And it stayed together. It's pretty cool. I like it.
Feel free to take a look at it.
Yeah.
Next
If you
question.
want, actually, you can go ahead and pass it around and people can take a look at it.
So did you have to abide by the covering of your face when you're in one of those?
Yes. So there was, it's actually, this is, I'm really glad you asked this because this is a great point that I want to make. So when you're here, the hottest it gets is what, like maybe 110? When you're over there, it gets so hot you need to cover your head because you'll get burnt. And when I was in the Middle East, it wasn't like I had all these thin clothes. I put everything on. There wasn't a stitch of exposed skin because it burns you. The heat just burns you. So you have to cover up. And that's why there are some very dark reasons that women are forced to cover up, especially in Iran and sometimes in Saudi Arabia. But it's because they want to protect their women. Their women are valuable. Not necessarily as a commodity, though some people put it that way. It's because, like it was explained to me, the women shouldn't have to. The women have our children. They raise our children. We respect them. If that woman has to open a door, it's because you are incapable. You are incompetent enough that you shouldn't, you're dirt. You're worse than dirt if your woman has to work. But as far as the covering up, so there's like in Iran and Saudi Arabia, as an outsider, you get a lot of leeway. Now in, Iraq, Iran, you don't get in anyway. You cover up. And you get used to it really quickly. I got used to it really quickly. Even now, like I have hair now, so it was short before the trip. But I even cover up my ears, and I'll just put my hair up, and it's a lot easier to get the hair out of my face. I don't have a problem with it anymore. I got used to it when it was necessary, when it was so hot that it would hurt. So to answer your question, yes.
You wore the hijab under your motorcycle helmet, and it was really funny because I remember you started wearing the hijab in Turkey, and a friend had like given you the scarf that you were wearing, and I was like, Bridget's been wearing a hijab for 2 days, and she's wearing like a do-rag already. That was kind of like the style that you kept for a lot of the time.
Yeah,
and it was great.
So other than the gas station incident, were you ever afraid for your life?
There was another incident where we stayed in a restaurant because we had basically, in Central America, we had run out of places to stay. In Central America, it's very hard to camp, and we were kind of cheap and we didn't want to stay in a hotel, so we hadn't planned on it. And it did end up being just fine, but we stayed at this sort of roadside bar, and we were sleeping on this person's basically front porch. And I remember having, like, you know those dreams that you can't wake up from, but you feel like someone's watching you? And I just kept having those and like waking up sweating. So there was definitely times I felt very unnerved and very in danger. And when you're sleeping outside, like, I'll let Kiva take this over in a minute, you hear noises. Like there's animals running around outside. So there was always a certain level of being paranoid.
Yeah, definitely.
But I camped a ton, and I went on the road, and pretty much nothing happened. Now when it does happen, it can be really bad. So I don't want to lie to you guys. Doing this sort of trip and doing this sort of adventure, 100% putting your life at risk. That's what it is. But you do that going down the street every day. So why not do it a fun way? I do want to just continue that question about when I took the machete outside.
Oh yeah, well, the story that Bridget is talking about is we were camping. It was our first night in mainland Mexico, and we had been in Baja, and Baja felt like kind of tame to us, and we had heard, a lot of things about the mainland and drug trafficking and things like that. So it was our first night in mainland Mexico, and we were just sleeping in like a turnoff of the road, basically. So it was like a little corner that you like drove into, and then you couldn't really see it from the road, and then you could pop out on the other side and keep going on the road. And we were camped, and there was just like some noises outside, like probably a small animal or something.
Or squirrel.
But I was like laying there, and it was kind of like, I don't know, the second week of us being out of the US, and I was just kind of trying to be like, ignore it, like, I don't know, pretend it doesn't exist. And Bridget like got up and grabbed her like Swedish brush axe, her machete.
Yeah, it's like
a giant machete.
This long the blade is, and it's curved at the tip to help like get through wood and stuff. And my brother, he gave it to me, Thomas gave it to me. He handed it to me handle first, and the exact words were, "This can cut off a pig's head in 2 swings. I hope you never have to use it."
So Bridget got up and she grabbed her machete and she like went to open the door of the tent and was like, "Bridget, where are you going?" And she turned to me and she went, "I'm going outside." And it was like, I am very scared of this woman. Like I know that she can do the things that need to be done. But no, this is an interesting question because I feel like there's a really fine line sometimes and for certain personality types between anxiety and intuition, and I feel like that can kind of get you into some trouble because the time that stands out really strongly to me about like when did you fear for your life on the trip, and I've talked to you about this story, but I was coming back from Bulgaria because I had to return this press bike I had from Kawasaki, Germany. So I was in Romania, and I had one of those nights that people who've done trips like this might remember or know, where you're kind of like looking for a camp spot, and you just can't find anything, and it's dark, and it's 10 p.m., and you're, kind of like trying to cut your losses. So I ended up camping in like a vacant lot in this kind of like party town on the Danube River, because I just couldn't get out of this like tourist area in Romania. And I was woken up at like 2 a.m. I thought somebody was trying to open the door to my tent. So I like freaked out, turned on my headlights, started talking really loudly, like made it clear that I was in the motorcycle, and I didn't think they wanted to hurt me, but I had like this pretty nice motorcycle at the time, so I was like, they want the keys, they want to steal my motorcycle. And again, like no evidence really to support any of this besides like what I thought was somebody pulling at the door of my tent. And I stayed up basically until sunrise, like sitting in the middle of my tent, holding my knife, and like waving my headlamp around intermittently, making noises, just being like, don't mess with me. And eventually I heard like this heavy breathing, and that was like, I was like, it's over. And I realized it was a dog. And I was like, oh, all of this noise was dogs like sniffing, probably had a granola bar in my tent, and I was prepared to die, and it was stray dogs. So you do really have to balance like your anxiety with like a genuine sense for when you're in danger, and sometimes you're wrong.
Yeah. We had a question from over here.
Yeah,